Hello, Matt LeBris. I am so happy to be talking to you this morning. I just want to say before we get started that it is okay with me if you swear.
What gives you that impression that I swear? Have I said
Well,
something?
I came across a few interviews where I heard some loose language, so it's all right if you want to just be yourself and
Oh,
let it rip.
no, I appreciate it. I also want to express gratitude for you. I had mentioned earlier, I had mentioned in communication with you, I really love what you're doing, and to be able to join you is an absolute blessing, maybe a blessing. We'll see what happens, but I really appreciate it. So extending gratitude to you. Thank you so
Oh my
much.
gosh, thank you so much. Wow. All right, let me just say a few words about you before I ask you to tell us what we need to know that you're a motivational speaker, that you have a top ranked podcast in the top 1% globally, and that you used to work with Daymond John of Shark Tank, and that you've interviewed some people that I admire very much, like Mel Robbins and Gabby Bernstein and Grant Cardone, who I also really like. And a lot of those top people who we think of as gurus in
Mm,
success. I just love that you're doing that, that you're shining a light on those things. And I think that's fantastic. But what I really want to know about is who is Matt? Who is
mm.
Matt? And what's behind all that? So, is there anything else we need to know before we dig into your life story?
Yeah, I am someone that deals with the polarities of life, right? I think it's really important to shed that note. It's really sexy, and I wish I had you around every single day to introduce me like that. There's so much more to the story. I
Yes.
like to just be open and transparent in regards to the polarities that I face. So you gave everyone the highlight reel, and I'll give everyone the low light reel, if that's even a
Yep.
term. Like, I've been arrested. I watched my mother battle cancer. I never got accepted into any high school. I got kicked out of 2 high school. I failed out of college. I blew $80,000 in life savings investing in my ego. I was diagnosed with panic disorder, with a mild depression, and all of which has been overcome, but I shine that light because I don't want anyone that's tuned into this to think like it's all glorious. There is so much more to the story, and we can go in depth in
Yeah,
any of that in any which direction, but that is what I wanna share right off the bat, and I'm sure this is about to get deep.
it
I'm
will.
prepared.
Good. All right, buckle up. I really appreciate that because the whole point here is that I want people to feel like they can see themselves in you. And I
Mm,
know that with all of those things that you just talked about, this will reach a wide variety of people who need to hear the things that you're about to say. So I'm really excited about that. So let's just go back to the very beginning. And if you could tell us where you were born and just give us a little bit about where you started out in life.
yeah, I'm born and raised in Queens, New York. I know we were just talking about this. I wouldn't change it for the world. I feel so blessed, and I don't wanna sound like an arrogant New Yorker, so what I will say is I think there are gifts that you are given no matter where you're born, right? I don't have the same gifts as someone that's born in the Midwest or someone that's born in Florida or California, right? I have the gifts that were instilled in me through the society, the culture, the upbringing of someone from Queens, New York. So oftentimes I like to say, I'm just a born and raised New Yorker who inevitably caught the hustler spirit, right? That's
Hmm.
what New York is. Very fast paced, very high energy. Sometimes you need to disconnect from that, but that's a whole other story. But I think being from here exposed me to some truly incredible things, and it's yielded me the opportunities that we've already started to talk about. Just seeing what's possible. Seeing what's possible was right in front of my face every single day.
Yeah.
And that led me to believe that it was also possible for me if it was possible for the individuals that I saw doing really cool things. And for that, I'm forever grateful. Plus, I'll also just throw this in here. We have really good freaking pizza.
That's one of my questions on
We
my
have really
list.
good pizza.
That's so funny. Yes, I love that. Oh my gosh. So when you think back to yourself as a small child, what is one of the very first things that you can remember, like a memory that you have?
Kindergarten. First memory I have is kindergarten. I had a crush on a girl that was in my class. Her name was Stephanie. I remember literally, I don't remember if we sat alphabetical order or whatever the case may be, but she was a few seats ahead of me. And whenever we were getting ready for dismissal, I would make sure that I was putting on my jacket as close as possible to her. That's one of the first memories I have. This is just so random, that's just off the top of my head. I'll give you another one. This one, I think this really impacted me from a psychological perspective. I just shared this on Twitter recently. I was in first grade and I went to private school my entire life. First grade, I really needed to pee. I needed to pee. I needed to go to the bathroom, and my teacher wouldn't let me. She kept saying, I don't know what she said. Let me not even go there. But what had transpired was me peeing on myself, wetting my pants. In first
Oh
grade,
my
I
god.
was super embarrassed, and I think that was one of the places where not being listened to, not being seen, not being heard stemmed from, and it ended up my grandfather coming to the school and we wore uniforms, so he gave me, like, these black swishy pants that made noise if you, like, rubbed your legs together. Those are my first memories, and it's funny because I can give you a memory from every single grade, like,
I
starting in
love
kindergarten.
that. You have a great memory. That story happened to me too. I sat in a cafeteria. I was in the 2nd grade, and I had to go to the bathroom, and I raised my hand, and nobody came. Nope, and I was so shy that I couldn't yell out.
Mm.
Nobody noticed me, and I didn't speak up for myself, and I ended up having to call home for a change of clothes.
It's hard to speak up for ourselves though when we're
I
so
know.
young, right? Because that was the
Isn't
first thing
that
that came to
interesting?
my mind. As you said
Yes.
that, I literally said, "Matt, why didn't you just go to the bathroom?"
Yeah, why didn't you
Full
just get up?
exactly, like, that
What
is
are we
exactly what came to my mind when you said
Yep.
that.
Yeah,
But
and I think that too about myself. It's interesting because you think about, like, authority at that time. You don't feel like you have permission. You don't
yes.
have agency.
Did you go to private school or public?
No, public.
Public. You know, it's
Yeah.
so interesting because as we're having this conversation, like, the school system I haven't been in the school system for years. I don't know what's going on there now, but when I was there, like, I didn't feel like, especially at that point, like, I had a say or I had a voice.
Yeah,
My voice required the attention of the adult, which was the teacher. And if she didn't give you the attention, if she didn't see you, if she didn't hear you, well, you didn't have a voice. So
that's so true. So
it's
true.
interesting. Yeah, it's interesting to how to break out of that. But yeah,
I
those are my
know.
very early memories.
Wow. I'm sure there's something really important there, and going back through that as you go through and review the memories from your childhood, like, that's a big one. Then it seems like you're someone who does stand up for himself now.
I'm working on it. I think I'm very much so a work in progress, and I think my life drastically changed in 2020. I don't know, 26 at the time. Yeah, I had to have been 26. And I think that's when I started to stand up for myself. And it's interesting because I could argue that I stood up for myself in the past, but I think I spoke my mind more from an egotistical perspective, as if the ego was in the driver's seat, versus now where I'm able to speak up for myself. But when I say myself, I could actually say my core self
Mm,
versus who I thought I truly
yeah.
was. There was a process of unshedding, but yeah, I think I'm getting to that point. Work in progress without a doubt.
So, do you think there were other times in your childhood where that same pattern came up again? Like you didn't have a voice or stand up for yourself in some way?
Yeah, 4th grade, I was playing basketball and I was on defense and I took a charge, meaning it was a offensive foul on the player. The player is actually his name is Dave Ortiz. I played high school basketball with him. I'll never forget it. He was so good in elementary school, and all he did was continue to drive the lane and score on us every single time. So my coach was like, "Step in front of him and take the charge." So I did what my coach told me to do, which was the correct play, and everything turned out the way it was, and I was just so grateful and so proud of myself that I started to tear up. I'm a very emotional guy. Like, I'm very emotional. I'm in 4th grade. So I started to tear up and we come back down the court. We're on defense again. And I look to my left. It was a kid at the time named Chris Smith. And Chris looked at me. He went to public school. He's a really tough kid. Like, I would never want to get in a fight with Chris. And he looked at me and he goes, "Dude, don't cry." And like, that again was probably a pattern of me burying emotions, right?
Yeah.
But I wish I would have stood up for myself in that moment and just said, "Hey man, I'm just really proud of myself right now, and that's how I'm
Right.
reacting to it." But again, I
Yeah.
wasn't taught how to say that at such a young age, and obviously as we continue through this conversation, you'll see that a lot of emotions were buried. Yeah,
But you
that's
had a sense, you had an innate feeling of that it just came out. So you had a sensitivity to, or even a maturity in that sense as a child.
Yeah,
Because I don't know,
well,
at
speak to
what
me more
age
about that.
yeah, at what age do you think we learn to repress those emotions? You were still allowing it to be exposed in the 4th grade.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a maturity in some way.
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective, and it's interesting you bring that up. I'm so grateful you brought that up, honestly. It's funny because there were probably years before 2020 that I don't remember the last time I cried. If I was in 2020 right now looking back, I wouldn't be able to tell you when the last time I cried was. Yes,
So
you're
just
right.
for perspective, when you were in the 4th grade, do you remember what year that was?
2001,
Okay.
9/11.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Oh,
was in.
oh boy.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's how I remember it. Yep. Years ago, but it's interesting because I don't necessarily remember when the repressed emotion started. Maybe that was it. And it's funny because I have another story that's very similar in regards to baseball. I don't
Mhm.
remember what grade I was in when this happened, but the same thing. I had hit a home run and I was very, I'm not hitting the ball 300 feet, whatever. The fences were moved in. I had hit a home run. And to be honest, I wasn't the best hitter, but I was dynamite on the pitcher's mound and I was like a gem in the field. So those were my strengths. So when I hit that home run, I felt super proud. Like I was able to contribute to my team in a way that I really never had experienced before. And again, I got in the dugout and I started to tear up. And the minute I started to tear up as I was taking my helmet off, I noticed the way my teammates were looking at me, who are still friends to this day, by the way. And I almost felt them back off.
Huh.
Like it was almost as if there was like this barrier between us, as opposed to wanting
Yeah.
to be embraced. Like feeling embraced by them stopped when they saw the tears on
They
my
were
face.
uncomfortable with it for some reason.
They were probably uncomfortable with it.
I think going deeper on that is both of those last 2 times, you were experiencing emotion because you were so proud of yourself. Did it interfere with your ability to have confidence in feeling pride in your own accomplishments?
Oh, 100%. I have a buddy that knows that I hate. I'm sorry. Excuse me. I dislike when people
It's
tell
okay.
me, yeah, like, if you said, "Matt, I'm proud of you," I would feel uncomfortable.
Really?
I'm still working on that. I was in therapy the other day, and I did something that I was really proud of, and it's so funny how this is connecting. You are so fantastic at this, but the other day in therapy, I was proud of something I did, right? And I said to my therapist, I said, "I'm getting emotional," and I felt the tears starting to come to my eyes because I was proud, right?
Mhm.
So, there were years where that was cut off,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think you're spot on where feeling proud is definitely something that was, like, cut off by those experiences.
Yeah. And so maybe you've gotten to the origins of that and you can continue to take a look afterwards on your own. I
No, I
love that.
appreciate it.
I
I
love that.
appreciate it
And
so
so the
much.
baseball, how old were you at the baseball? The basketball was 4th grade, the baseball was
It had to have been
a little
right around
older?
that same
Oh,
time.
okay, same time.
Yeah, 4th, 5th grade, I highly doubt 6th, but I would definitely argue and say either 3rd, 4th, or 5th, like, within
Okay.
that time
That's
period.
that range. So that's
Yeah.
interesting. So you'd have been probably around 11-ish.
Is that how old we are when
10,
we're that young?
10, you're about 10 in the 4th grade, 10, I think 10-ish, 10,
Yeah.
11, depending on when you started school. But that's very interesting. And so that also because it was 2001 and you were living in New York at that time. You were in Queens though during
Yeah,
9/11.
so yeah, it's so
So how did
crazy.
that impact your childhood?
9/11?
Yeah.
This is so wild, but my mom used to take me to work all the time, and my mom worked literally right next door to the World Trade Center, to the point where that's where we would go to get lunch when I went to her office. You know how, like, they have bring your child to work day?
Yes.
I was a big hit in her office because I was really into wrestling, and the guys would, like, wrestle with me. I remember that was really fun, and, yeah, in the bottom of the World Trade Center, they had a Warner Brothers store. Like, I literally remember this so vividly, going there all the time, and each time that there was some sort of scare, I believe there was a World Trade Center scare in 1992, the year I was born, my mom happened to be off that day. 9/11, my mom happened to be elsewhere. She was still in the city, but she was elsewhere. She wasn't in her office that day. My dad, on the other hand, he worked in Long Island, but when I was in school, I vividly remember that day. They weren't letting the kids leave. Everything was on lockdown. You had to be picked up by your parent. I remember my mother picking me up. She made it home safely. And I remember her, it was just weird because it was like out of the ordinary. Like, typically, I would go to after school or I would be picked up by, like, my grandfather or someone, but my mom picked me up and I didn't go to after school, so I was very confused, and all I remember is her turning the TV on and sitting directly in front of it, like, literally directly in front of it, and she waited for my dad to get home. This is pre their divorce, and my dad worked on Long Island, so she knew he was safe, and yeah, like, they were just in front of the TV. In regards to the impact it had on me, I think it's just made me hyper vigilant of the things that go on around me. I've always been, I don't wanna say on edge because that would probably be the wrong term to use here, but it's definitely made me very aware of my surroundings,
Did
you
you
know?
realize it was an attack near your home? Like an
You know
attack?
what? I think I was too young to understand what was taking place. And even in 4th grade, I'll openly admit that I don't think I understood what had happened or what
Mhm.
transpired. Did I understand that people were victims of that attack? Yes. A very close family member had lost his life. I saw obviously the smoke. You could literally see
Yeah,
the smoke from my
you could
front
see it.
door. Yeah, like you could literally see it. But in regards to anything else, I don't think I really was able to conceptualize that until years later, and then I realized, wow. And of course, it leaves a sour taste in your mouth. I think maybe even for a while, I was potentially nervous to go up in buildings or go up in
Mhm.
elevators or whatever, and that's obviously something that had to have been worked through just life working itself out, but yeah, at such a young age, I'm kind of
Right.
oblivious to it to an extent.
But even I think by association with your parents probably felt some anxiety about it and other people that you knew, especially if
Sure.
you had lost a family member, which I'm very sorry to hear. But those things do seep into the consciousness. It's interesting. And I know you talked about like some anxiety. I'm interested to see later on as we talk, like how you think that manifests from different things that have happened to you.
Oh, for
Um,
sure.
yeah. Wow. All right. That's very heavy. What else about that time? What kind of a student were you when you were
Oh, I
young?
was the worst. I'm being super judgmental of myself, but I was, up until college, the class clown.
Oh,
I was the class clown without a doubt, and I had a damn good time. Like, I really did. But this was on my parents' dime. But while I was having a good time, it was on their dime. Just going to private school my whole life, and I would be the person that would just act out. And ultimately, doing the work that I do now, I can realize that the acting out was essentially for the attention of my mother or my father or whatever it was. And I never excelled in school, not because I was dumb. I mean, I graduated with Dean's List honors when I went to college and I had to pay for it myself. I put it together eventually, but I just never wanted to apply myself
mm,
in certain areas. I do remember vividly in 7th grade, I had a project. It was a writing project. I love to write. People always compliment my writing abilities. And I was so into that project. I was so into it. So there were moments where I was really into coursework, but when it came to math, when it came to science, like I was looking over at the next person at a very early age, making sure that I had their answers.
okay.
Like I did whatever I had to do. And being that I went to private, you just get pushed along, right? Like your parents are paying for it. You're not going to get left back unless they want you to get left back. Ultimately, like I said, total class clown all through high school as well. Give me the attention. Even if it was negative, big time.
Yeah. That's really interesting. If I ask your mom what kind of a kid you were, what would she say?
My mom, she would be honest with you. She would probably fluff it up a little bit, and you're asking a mom about their son. I'm her firstborn. As much as I'm a mama's boy, while we don't have the best of relationships, it's funny because the way she would tell me, like, if I asked the question, she would give me a different response than she would give someone else,
Oh,
because
yeah.
that's the
Okay, so
dynamic of the
what would she say to me?
To you, she would probably say she would give me the compliments. I was funny, I was athletic. I'm using descriptive adjectives for the sake of it. She would definitely say I was still a pain in the ass. I'll be honest, like, she would say that. Yeah, she would say that I was driven, I was creative, which I was all of those things and still am. But then on the flip side, if I had asked what I was like as a child, she would probably say the negative things.
Yeah.
I was a pain in the ass. I was threatened with being sent off to military school so many times. That was like a constant anytime I was acting out. An adjective that stuck with me, this was given to me by my principal in 4th grade, elementary school. She called me brazen. And
Oh.
that word had stuck with me forever. So my mom would potentially even use that word.
But that
You
can
know,
have a positive connotation too, I think.
how
Being brazen,
what does
because
it
if
mean?
you
I don't
were
even know what
like,
it means.
it means like daring, having
Mm,
guts. To me, I suppose it could have a negative connotation. I guess they meant you were being
I push the
precocious.
limits.
Right.
Yeah.
But you were pushing the limits. But in today's world, like being brazen is a very valuable skill. You could flip that narrative.
And I once again appreciate your perspective here. I need you in my life daily. This is
Maybe I
awesome.
should I could be your therapist. You could start paying
Y-
me.
I love it. I love it. But yeah, really, that's the best way to answer it. There's two sides to the coin, I think.
Yeah. Interesting. So did you feel like you had a rocky relationship with your parents? Kind of
Always
looking
did. Still to the day. Still to
really.
the day. My dad, and listen, I'm grateful they're both in my life, right?
Yeah.
Still, like to this day, I'm grateful. But we definitely don't have the best of relationships. My dad and I have a very surface level relationship. We had bonded over sports. That's what our relationship
Mhm.
was. And it's funny because I was reading a book called How to Do the Work by Dr. Nicola Pera, and she had mentioned, don't quote me on this exactly, but she had mentioned something along the lines of having a parent try to live through you. And I feel like that's what
Mm.
my dad did. Like my dad tried to make me into something. Not that I wasn't that something, but like what was his intention behind pushing me on the baseball field or behind pushing me on the basketball court or wherever? When it got to a point where like I realized I never had a conversation with my dad about sex. I never had a conversation with my dad about money outside of the conditioning that he pre-programmed me with in regards to like talking about bills or talking about this, that, the other. And then on the flip side with my mom, my parents were going through a divorce in my very sponge-like years of elementary school. So when my dad was in the living room where I was hanging out playing my video games, my mom was upstairs in her bedroom not wanting to be bothered because she didn't want to be around my dad as they were going through the divorce. Or at least that's what I hypothesize. I just always felt like I received some sort of neglect. And even in the verbatim that my mother used to me, like wanting to send me off to military school because I was acting out, or telling me to go on vacation with my father so that she could spend time with my sister. And I'm like, hey, do you not want me? That's the type of relationship. And while things have potentially gotten better, and I mean, I've even put it out there, I'm like, hey, Ma, like, let's do therapy together. Let's not die with a shitty relationship. And while I tried my best, or my best at the time, I should say, nothing transpired, but you could always get back in the batter's box and try and swing again at a
Mhm.
certain point. But yeah, we really, and it's hard because that's your immediate family.
Yeah.
And to see other people around you have such good relationships with their immediate family, and you're just like, I don't have that. Like, my best relationships are with my friends. You just feel like the black sheep. And while I
Yeah.
embrace that now, it didn't feel so good in my earlier years.
I'm sure. And what about your sister? Do you have a good relationship with her growing up?
N Growing up, yes, we were better friends growing up, and then at a certain point, things changed, and I think it's almost I'll hold myself accountable and say that I should be a better leader, being that I'm her older brother. I see that she looks up to me, like, I
Mm.
see it firsthand, but I found ways to be upset with her, and I think ultimately the upset has an underlying reason, which is probably my jealousy for her relationship with my mom.
Yeah.
That gets really deep, but
Yeah.
yeah, growing up, we had a good relationship, and then now it's kinda surface level. We, like, just brush each other off, don't acknowledge one another, just when her boyfriend's around is a different story, but just me and her, totally different.
Wow. So, how do you see those relationships in the next few years? Is it something you think you can work on?
Yeah, 100%, but working on it also takes the other party to wanna work on it.
Yeah. What if they never do?
That would be such a tough pill to swallow, but it is a reality of life, and I think that's one thing that I learned the hard way when you try and change other people. You just exert your energy,
Exactly.
and it's like you're just exerting your energy, that's all you're doing, and
Yeah.
it doesn't often lead to what you want it to, and that's okay, right? Like, I ask the question on my podcast every now and then, and I ask the question, "Is everyone meant to heal?"
Mm.
And the answer, in my opinion, is, does everyone have the capability of healing? Yes. Is everyone meant to heal? I don't think so. I do not
Mhm.
think everyone is meant to heal in this lifetime. Otherwise, they would if it was divine, if it was something that
Mhm.
they were meant to do. I'm curious, do you think everyone is meant to heal?
I'm thinking about it as you're saying that. I think that everyone is meant to learn.
Okay. What's the
Um,
difference between heal and
Whether the
learn?
learning leads to the healing in this
Mm,
lifetime, I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know if everyone necessarily is meant to heal, but I do believe they're meant to learn. And how many lifetimes does that take? I don't know.
It takes as many
Eventually,
lifetimes.
I do think that we are, this is my belief, but I believe we are meant to ascend to a higher consciousness that maybe we don't understand here right
Yeah.
now.
Are you
And
familiar with
so,
Dr. Joe Vitale?
no.
He's from the movie The Secret.
Oh, okay. Yes.
So
Okay.
he said
Yeah, I
something
listen
brilliant.
to a lot of those things. I love that. What does he
Yeah.
say?
He said something so brilliant to me. He said, and he's very metaphysical, right? That's where he holds his doctor from, or doctorate, whatever you would refer to it as. And he said, Matt, your soul is going to keep reappearing on earth until it learns all. I'm sorry, let me try and incorporate what you're saying here. Your soul will continue to show up on earth lifetime after lifetime until it achieves what it needs to achieve in regard to forming some sort of like completeness. Like, and that means healing. So it's one thing to, like, we can learn, but just because we learn doesn't mean that we actually apply what we learn. I learn all the
Well,
time.
that's right.
So essentially that's exactly what he had talked about. And I was like, you know what? I think that's so damn true. Like, we
Yeah.
just keep showing up.
Yes, yes. I That's my belief as well. I think that our essence, whatever our essence
Mm,
is, chooses to continue to come back into this form here in this place, Earth. Not to sound too woo-woo, until we reach a level of ascension where we're
yeah,
beyond having to do that. So if we've learned all the things we're supposed to learn. And I do believe ultimately it's that place, that ascension or enlightenment, whatever you want to call it, it is being fully healed. And
mm,
so that's why the inner self and getting to know the inner self is so important. And that's why, like, conversations where you're thinking about your relationships, where you're thinking about your patterns and your childhood memories and things is so important, because getting to know the inner self is the key to growth.
agreed.
And growth
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean healing.
No, I
Yeah.
don't.
I mean, I guess in an ideal world, yes, you'd be completely whole, you'd be healed, or you'd be all, I don't know, all perfect. But I don't think that's human necessarily.
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah, I don't either, but it's an interesting conversation because I don't think it's something that we in our body right now can actually measure either.
True.
But it's
Yeah.
I would love to try, but I
I
don't find
know.
that to be possible because we
No.
don't know what lessons are looming in front of us. We do know what has happened to us, but sometimes we don't even know what lessons are like literally taking place right this second.
You just
Um,
have to be open to the fact that we don't know what we don't know, and
mm,
just always allowing ourselves to be the student.
that's the
So what do you
mindset.
think you are supposed to learn with these difficult relationships that you're presented with in life?
Wow. There's so much. I think the number one thing is understanding that I need to reparent myself. I can provide
Mm,
myself with everything that I seek outside of me. And for years upon years, that was attention. Again, negative or positive attention. It didn't matter as long as I got some form of attention. Where my worth went, right? My worth was so far outside of myself, and that needed to be shifted inward. Again, still a process that's being worked on, but ultimately self soothing, right? Being able to self soothe, being able to give myself the ability to once again feel the emotions that were closed off for so long and take care of myself. And that's been a process. Like, it hasn't been easy. There was a lot of tears shed, but it's actually been fun, because I'm able to meet you where I'm able to meet you today. And this I find fun versus if we did this, let's say 5 years ago, you would have probably hung up by now because I was just such an egotistical a hole. So it's been a great journey, but ultimately, in short, the answer would be to reparent myself.
yeah. I think that's beautiful. There are many of us who need to do that. And even if we had, quote, good parenting as a
Mm,
child, there are things that you need as you grow that are different from what you received as a child. So
agreed.
I think that's a really beautiful thing to think about. And I think for you, like, the humor was a defense mechanism. And
Oh, 100%. Yeah, big time.
so when you got into high school and then your parents had been divorced, how was that time for you?
It wasn't the easiest because my mom had started dating right away, and honestly, the dating led to a guy moving into my childhood home, like, replacing where my dad was, and I saw the way he treated my mom, and being that my mom has her own shit she needs to work through, she was such a people pleaser, like, she
Mm.
catered to this guy, and I'm just like, the way he like, now looking back, I'm like, the way he treats her is, like, such shit. It's so bad, and I saw that year after year, so what I did was try and model that behavior to get my mom's attention,
So she
and
would be pleasing you.
not even so I would get attention because I thought
Okay.
that's what she liked.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
I thought that I my mom's name is Deborah, and at a young age, I'm in high school calling her Deb, not even calling her mom.
Oh,
Like, having that sort of behavior, and it was so unhealthy in that regard because he just wasn't a role model, and at that point, like I said, I really had what I find is like a surface level relationship with my dad. I was looking to latch on to anything that I could model. And I never had that positive influence from a masculine perspective until I met a really great group of friends who are what I consider brothers to this day. And they were only a few years older than me, like 4 years older than me. So that happened later on. But going into high school, I was just a troublemaker. I was stealing money from the guy my mom was dating. I was acting out in ways in the classroom, just again, seeking for that attention, really seeking it.
now I know you've written about the fact that you had applied to get into some private high schools that didn't work out. So where
Yes.
did you end up when you went to high school?
Yeah, so I've been an athlete my whole life. I just mentioned to you earlier, I'm 6'5", 215 pounds. I was gifted with the body of an athlete, and I had the skills that translated into being a complete athlete. So while I didn't get into any private schools, because here in New York City, you get to pick 3 high schools, or at least I did when I was applying. You get to pick 3 private schools, and the way that you rank them is the way that they're considered. So number one would be your top priority, two and three. If you put some at 3, there's a good chance you're not getting in because that's just the way the system works. I didn't get into any of them, and I did get zoned by New York City law. You are zoned to a public school, but my parents did not want me to go there, and just knowing my track record, they were like, "No, you're not going there." So by the gifts of my athletic abilities and some politics, I found myself in a small seminary school, which is a Catholic high school for all boys that wanna become priest, not what I wanted to become, and it was essentially a freaking fraternity. Like, that's what it was. People get the fraternity in college. I got it my freshman year of high school. I did not last in that school whatsoever, and I'm so glad I got out because I would have got myself into big trouble. It was bad, like, we just did not stop acting out, and then come sophomore year, I was there sophomore year for, let's call it a week, and I saw how the people that were acting out with me were doing in class and how I was doing in class, and I'm like, "Wait, you guys are doing much better than I am, but we're all acting out together. Like, I'm far behind." There was just so much going on. I was crying to my parents to get me out of that school. I said, "This is not for me, like, I need out," and the new environment was a good transition. I transferred to a very good school, nationally ranked basketball program, like, very awesome school, and there was a lot of students that I knew there just from growing up in the neighborhood, but there was a level of comfort that I didn't have, so the acting out actually didn't take place until months down the road. So there was actually some cushion time for my parents to relax per se in regards to my
Mhm.
behavior.
Okay.
But yeah, that's essentially where I ended up graduating from high school.
Okay. Interesting. So the seminary school where they're supposed to be, you'd think
Mm.
there would be good behavior was actually like crazy.
It was a fraternity. It was a fraternity. I remember one day we
Were they really people that wanted to be priests or were they just
Oh,
people that their
absolutely.
parents okay. I was gonna say,
Absolutely.
did their parents put
Yeah.
them there because they had bad behavior before?
So this is the thing, the mindset behind my parents and having me go there was I wouldn't act out in class if there were no girls around. They thought I was trying to get the attention of the girls in my class, which honestly wasn't the case, like, that just wasn't it. So I'll never forget this. My freshman year, one day we were in Latin class. They made us study Latin. And this is how bad we were. Like, we were so bad. We had the teacher, his name was Mr. Dibbs, close all of the windows during the summer, and we had to wear blazers, like, we had to dress up, tie, all of that. Close all of the windows, close all of the doors, and we had an individual take fart bombs, crush them in loose leaf paper, put them in the garbage can, they all went off, and the room just reeked. Like, we were the havoc crew, and we were so young. We're 12, 13 years old, like, we're boys, we're just, like, trying to have fun, and we were a disaster.
Oh
We
gosh.
were a complete disaster. Like I said, it was a fraternity, a freshman fraternity.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy. So you got through high school, you made it through.
You know?
Did you have any people in your life at that time that you felt you could look up to, like heroes? Nobody.
No.
So still in high school, it's really rocky. Is there anything going on in your family that you could point to as like a positive tradition or a cultural, like something you did, special meals or holidays? Was there anything you could point to?
No, it's so interesting you say that. My family always got together for the holidays, but I didn't wanna be around my family because I was just, like, the only one that felt different, right?
Mhm.
I'll give you examples, like, out of all of my cousins, I was, like, the only one that played sports. Like, how do I resonate with people at that time, at least? Like, now I get along with my cousins very well, but how do I resonate with people that don't resonate with what I do or
Mhm.
with what I'm into? I found it very challenging. So I didn't even really care for the family gatherings. And then in regards to role model, maybe potentially I started to have a role model around 17 years old, but truthfully, like no one that was close, no mentor, like nothing like that. And I wish I did. And obviously, if I'm blessed with children, I would be able to be that person for them, but or at least guide them to that if they weren't interested in me being that person for them, but I think that's so important, but I lack that.
Yeah, and that to me, that kind of explains the acting out in a way. Not only just looking for attention, but you probably felt very
Mm.
unmoored, like very free, floating in a way. There wasn't anyone to help shape you. You're kind
Ground
of
me, exactly.
yeah. After high school, what happened to you? Did you go to college?
I did. In my senior year of high school, I actually tore the labrum in my right shoulder. I was a baseball player, I was a pitcher, and I played basketball, and like I said, the basketball program was nationally ranked. Although I had no desire of playing basketball in college, I definitely had the desire of playing professional baseball.
Okay.
Many kids do, a lot of kids do, right? But at my size, at the way that I threw the ball, the way that I performed on the field, I was getting looks at from pretty major opportunities, and I tore my labrum, and I was just like, "You know what? I had the surgery and I just gave up." I had this conversation last night because I'm getting the chills. I really have goosebumps right now.
Oh no.
And I literally gave up on that. And I hate to say that I have a regret, but I do. And it was that. Like, I wish, again, I wish I had that role model. Like, not even my baseball coach was a role model to me.
So
It,
nobody
I,
said to you, "Get back in the game. You can do this. You can
no,
overcome this."
nope, nope. I
And you
had the
couldn't
surgery.
say it for yourself.
I did, yeah. You know why? I was just being pulled in a different direction. And I am grateful I got pulled in this direction. I am. But yeah, I had no one that was like after the surgery, went through my rehab, I tried throwing again, and there was like like glimpses of pain that just needed to be pushed through, right? Scar tissue, that type of stuff. And once I felt it, I just got scared and I shut down and I just stopped showing up to baseball practice. I didn't even quit the
Mhm.
team officially. And that's another thing that I regret. I gave up on my team. And
Mhm.
while that's 10 years ago at this point, still it doesn't sit right with me. But yeah, I really got pulled in a different direction during my senior year. I was a very social person. Like I said, I was a class clown. I was friends with everyone. I had a lot of friends in high school and even beyond that, like just in the neighborhood and whatnot. And I started to get into the hospitality industry. I wanted to party, not necessarily with like hard drugs, but I wanted to be where the women were. I wanted the attractive women that I'd never met before. I wanted to be around places that would let me drink at 17, 18 years old. I started to get into that mix of things. And that actually translated into a business that was very fruitful for me for 7 years going through college. While I did end up in college, I went to private school my whole life, but when I went to college, I had no one over my shoulder ensuring that I was in class.
Mhm.
So I started to skip. And then I failed out, and then I'm like, "You know what? I'm making so much money from this business as it is, like, I don't even need college." So, I actually ended up taking a break until I had a revelation, a big revelation, which ended up sending me back, and a lot transpired from there.
Okay, so what was the business?
Yeah.
Was it
The
just
biz
like a hospitality-based business?
Yeah, hospitality-based business. So, at first, I wasn't a business owner, I was working within someone's business, and this was the individual that I said could have potentially started to be a role model, although it ended up being negative to an extent because I really put a strong emphasis on making money, thinking that would heal all things.
Mm.
At the end of the day, it was really beautiful. We would have venues across New York where we would throw parties, right? College parties or whatever the case may be, and I had such a blast doing this, like, it was so fun. Reckless at times because I endangered my life and others by some of the behaviors that I was putting forth, but we had an absolute blast. I met so many people, and essentially being in this industry drastically changed my life for the better. But in short, yeah, we would just have venues across New York, whether it be Long Island or Queens or Brooklyn or sometimes Manhattan, and we would throw parties there, and we did really good. We
And
did
you
really
put
good.
out the word, there's gonna be a party, there's a
E-
theme, and you put out the
Exactly.
word and people show up and
Exactly, and it was super consistent, right? Like, it wasn't one-off parties, like, at
mhm.
some venues, we were there for 3 years.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, we were very I think we had 2 venues where we were there for 3 years, which
Okay.
is really incredible knowing the industry, but, yeah, I had a blast. I don't regret being in that, but that's essentially where I got pulled to.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a lot of fun, and in New York, obviously, that's the scene.
Absolutely.
So then what was the revelation that you had that sent you back to school?
Yeah, I was sitting in my friend's restaurant. He was the chef of a restaurant in, I wanna say, I'm gonna botch the name. It's in Brooklyn, Sunset Park. It was in Sunset Park or right outside of Sunset Park, Brooklyn. And the restaurant had closed, and I'm gonna be very transparent. We were just sitting there smoking weed. And I had my laptop on me and I said, "Hey man, like I really want to show you this video." And in the video, it was a gentleman who said 3 words that forever changed my life. Those 3 words were legacy over currency. And I stood there in
Mm.
my tracks and I said, "Damn, legacy over currency, huh? That's not how I'm living my life." I had failed out of college. I was working 5 jobs. I was like, "I'm just gonna make it hustling." I was doing my nightlife stuff, my hospitality stuff. I was delivering for an Italian restaurant on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I was selling weed because why would I wanna pay for the weed? I just wanna smoke it. Like, I'll sell it too. I was working in a gym because I had the mindset of if I don't need to pay for a gym membership, that's less money coming out of my pocket. I was picking up food for my buddy's restaurant, another buddy of mine who needed supplies every morning. So I would do that before I went to the gym. Like I had this whole system and all it was doing was making me more and more money, thinking, like I said earlier, that it would heal me, that it would make me
Mm.
feel better. And don't get me wrong, to an extent it did. Like I felt very secure. Like I knew I could take care of myself. I knew God forbid something happened. I gave my parents money. Like my dad needed money for a car. I gave him money. My mom had asked me for money when she would see me come home from the hospitality events with wads of cash because it was a
Mm.
cash business. So I was
Yeah.
able to take care of people and that made me feel really good. But legacy over currency, I got to a point where I said, you know what? What am I going to be remembered for? For how much money I made? Like, I was still an asshole to a lot of people at that time in my life. And that pains my heart even admitting that right now, but it's true because all I cared about was myself and making more money and the people I was making money with. So I said to myself, all right, Matt, like enough's enough. Let's continue to make money reasonably, not the way you're hustling. And let's get your act together. And getting my act together meant just going back to school for one class. That's all they let me take. I finally graduated with my 2-year degree. I was able to go to a 4-year school. So I was on the 7-year plan for a 4-year degree essentially, but again, I wouldn't change it. So when I went to the 4-year school, I realized like all of these opportunities I had in my life, which I've been blessed with a plethora of opportunities, the individuals at this school didn't have any of them. And it's not to say that they needed all of my experiences, but I said to myself, why not bring the experiences you've had to this school? So I became a student leader. I was getting my act together in the classroom. As mentioned, I graduated with Dean's List honors. But as a student leader, I took on different roles like being the president of a club or being an ambassador for student entrepreneurship across 24 colleges. There was a lot that I was doing that I never did before. and all in service of others. That was my goal, was to serve others, and that it's such a big shift, but that's exactly how it had happened, and I'm grateful I made that because it brings me to where I am.
Yeah. So at some point there was a shift into leadership. And it feels like your whole life up to that
Mm,
point, you were looking for the leadership, you were looking for guidance. And somehow you discovered that you could be that guidance for other
mm.
people. And then how did that affect your own psyche? Did you feel
So
the shift of that you were stepping into that you talked about reparenting? Were you in that process of putting yourself in the leadership role of yourself?
I don't think that I was doing what I needed to do from a reparenting perspective at that point. I do think that I was able to build a level of self-worth. The only thing is the self-worth at that point was still externalized.
Mm,
So all of the accomplishments that were happening, I was throwing events on my campus and the president of the college was showing up. Like, I would walk through the hallways in a suit because that's just the way that I dress to go to school, which is so not like anyone that goes to college. Like, I acted the part that I wanted to be, and I would walk through the hallways and people would compliment my confidence in the way that I walked, and it was just piling on top of me. So it gave me some sort of worth without a doubt. And it did allow me to emerge into a leader. And it's not to say that I never was a leader, especially coming from a sports background, but it was just incomparable what I was able to do for other people, which really started to drive me. But once again, just to mention, a lot of it was externalized. And
yeah.
once it was gone, the worth needed to be, it needed to like latch on to something. Like it can't live without something outside of myself, if that makes sense. Almost a cell or some sort of like parasite. It needs to like latch onto a cell to live. And
Yeah.
that's what my worth was like. It was like, all right, what can it latch onto? If you no longer have the college stuff, what can it latch onto? Your bank account? Can it latch onto your job title or something that was not within?
And was there a time when you shifted that perspective, where you became less ego driven and went more into the inner,
I think that's what I'm actually still working on,
your
you know?
process?
I'm in the process of that now. So I just turned 30 and I probably started this process, like I said, in 2020. So almost 4 years now. That's still being worked on. And the shift has started to happen. The ball has moved on that without a doubt.
And
And I'm
what's the
grateful.
catalyst for that? What's the catalyst for that?
Getting a deep understanding of all the things that we talked about. I was so numb to all of this. I was numb to each and every event that I had told you about up until 2020, maybe a little bit before then, but none of it meant nothing to me. None of it meant anything. All I would do, all right, this just happened, brush it off, on to the next. This just happened, brush it off, on to the next. I just kept moving forward. There was never a moment of processing anything in my life. So I would just show up every day and keep moving forward until I couldn't move forward anymore. And that's when I started to turn inward with the help of others, people that could actually guide me because I didn't know what I was doing. I thought turning inward was going to a Tony Robbins Unleash the Power Within event. And while that work is great, like walking on fire, raw is all really great, he's not working with you one on one. If you don't know how to turn inward at that event, like you're not going to get the most out of it. So
Yeah.
that's where I was. And luckily, like I said, the shift of worth has most definitely been turned more inward without a doubt.
And when did you get in touch with Damon John? Do you have a
Mm,
story about having a couple of minutes to talk to him and what came as a result of that?
yeah, so that happened while I was in college, and this is how the universe works for us. I have a Post-it card from Tony Robbins that says the world is working for us or whatever, life is happening
For
for you, not
us.
to you.
Yes.
Yeah, so I was in college and I was actually a junior, quote unquote. I was a super junior at that point, and I was in Dominican Republic on my spring break. I'm very grateful. I was a college student that was able to travel and do whatever I wanted to do because of all of the hard work that I put in
Right.
to amass a certain amount of wealth. And while I was in Dominican Republic, I get a phone call, and on the call it says my college right across the top of the screen. And I'm like, why the hell are they calling me? Like, I paid my own damn tuition. Like, I know I did because my parents cut me off when I had failed out. So I answered the call knowing that Verizon was going to charge me at the time for an international call.
Mm.
And the woman on the other end of the line was like, "Hey, Matt, how are you? This, that, the other. Would you like to meet Daymond John?" And I'm saying to myself, woman, you know me so damn well. The answer is yes. Just tell me when and where. And of course, the when and where just so happened to be on my college campus, like a day or two after I arrived back to the States. And I said to myself, oh man, like this is awesome. So I was one of three students that had the opportunity of meeting him in the green room. He grew up in the neighborhood in which my college is in. He came to the school to do an event for his book at the time, which was Power of Broke. And like I said, one of three students that had this opportunity. There were no other students in that green room. It was a whole bunch of press. It was a whole bunch of folks that might have known him from when he was growing up or faculty, staff, all of that. We were the last three people to shake his hand before he went on stage and get our pictures. I was actually the last person to shake his hand. And he looked at me. I'm much taller than he is. And he said, what the hell do they teach you here? How to break people's hands? So it was a good vibe off the bat. And by the end of our very brief encounter, I said, Daymond, I'm going to work for you. And I know I have one big head, but he looked at me like I had 10 of these. Like, literally. So he went, he did his fireside chat, and I was sitting in the front of the theater. At the end of the event, I went to go meet up with my mentor, who wasn't a student. He was in the back, and we met in the middle of the theater. I thought we were the last two people to leave, but out of my peripheral vision, I see Santa Claus, or at least someone that looks like Santa Claus, walking up the side of the theater. I said, man, that guy looks really familiar. And no, I'm not saying he looks familiar because he looks like Santa Claus, but like he just looked familiar. And my mentor, his name is Phil. He said, yeah, that's George. His name is George Barnes. And I was like, oh, where do we know him from? Like, how do I know him? His, lo and behold, he was in the hospitality industry. And while he's much older than we are, we've done parties together or we've done events together. And I said, wow, what are the chances of that? So we left the theater and we started to talk to George. George just so happens to work for Daymond. And I said, wow, like, all right, cool. So I was able to get us back in the green room just from being connected with George. He had hooked it up. And I don't know, like a couple days later, I realized I had George on Facebook. And I said, George, what do I got to do to prove my worth and like intern or what can I do? And he worked some magic. He was able to get me an interview. That interview turned into an internship. That internship turned into a job. That job turned into me actually getting interviewed by Daymond. It was a really beautiful unfolding, but the universe came full circle for me in that moment, without a doubt.
That's amazing. And I think it shows you what you're capable of. It shows you like what potential looks like.
Yeah,
I love
a
that.
blessing. It was a
Yeah, it's
blessing.
totally a blessing. It's totally a blessing. So from there, you have been now, you've got this whole new business going on. So just tell me a little bit about what you're doing now, like in terms of
Yeah,
that. I know you do the podcast, but
100%. When I was working with Daymond, I got hired to do something I had no clue what to do. I didn't know any of the terms, none of it. Essentially, running all of his content initiatives. I didn't even know what the word content meant. I
okay.
really didn't. I didn't even know what the word press meant. So I was running all of his content. His content was this book right back here, if I could point to it. It was his digital content on social. It was his coursework. It was his emails. It was literally all of that. And while I was doing that for him, I said, you know what? This guy is living a life that I would love to live. Like, I need to start doing this for myself. So I started to do it for myself. And when I started to do it for myself, I realized what was happening. I was being asked to speak at colleges and universities. I was like, wait, you want me to speak at a college or university? Okay, cool. I'll give it a shot. The first one I did was at Nassau Community College. It absolutely sucked. Not for,
But you
it
did
was
it. You did it. You just
of
went in there.
course.
Like that's what strikes me is that you saw a world. You decided you wanted to be part of that world. You knew you could do it yourself. And you just went in there and did it. Messy.
Yeah, very messy. Yeah, at that point in life, I really didn't find fear to be a thing, which is
Mm,
interesting. But yeah, I realized I need to do this for myself. So I started to do it for myself. And I prematurely left my job with Daymond, and I openly admit that. Just ego still got the best at me at that point of life. And while I was with him for 3-ish years, I said to myself, you know what? I want to help more people with this. I'm helping Daymond. We're getting great results. I'm helping myself. Who else can I help? So I've been very fortunate of being able to work with New York Times bestselling authors, former presidents of major television companies, startup brands. The list goes on, and have had tremendous success doing it. But yeah, it's been a blessing to just see the work that transpired translate into other areas of life. And furthermore, even like with my own podcast, like I'm super grateful to be able to have that opportunity. Like I didn't know that was possible for me, before I started working with Daymond. I didn't know I could start a podcast like until I did that work. So
Yeah.
it really paid off.
But that's what you're doing. What you're doing is reminding me of the book Think and Grow Rich. Your
Mm,
podcast is devoted to decoding success. So looking at the things that make people successful or that are enhancing people's lives in it, really, when you get down to it. And so, what that guy did in that book, Napoleon Hill, he wrote the book because he was looking at Andrew Carnegie and all the things he was doing to make himself a success. So you're doing the same thing. You saw it in Damon John. You knew you could see it in yourself, and now you're bringing it to the world so that everyone has the chance to see what are the keys, what are the tools.
yeah, I appreciate that perspective. I sent Damon an email this Thanksgiving and I said, and it's funny because this is going to connect to one thing that you mentioned numerous times throughout this episode, but I sent him an email on Thanksgiving and I just said, hey man, I'm sending emails just expressing gratitude. I surprise people. Like no one knows who's going to get it, when they're going to get it. But I like doing that. It makes me feel really good. I'm a really good writer. And to know that I'm able to express my gratitude for someone in my life and just to know that they feel really good from my words, like that makes me feel really good. So Damon didn't know he was going to get this email. And I just wrote to him and I said, hey man, like, first of all, happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. Wanted to let you, I'm going to get a little emotional saying this, but I just wrote to him. I'm like, you were like a father figure to me. And he still is, just
Mm.
at a distance because I'm not with him every single day. And he took me under his wing like no other. He really did. He would pull me out of work early just to go get dinner. And
Mm.
he would include me in things like playing Monopoly and just being able to hang out with him and be in proximity of him. And he wanted to teach me. And for that, I'm just like super grateful for. So I was able to finally get a quote unquote father figure. And when I say this, I don't mean to put my own father down. And I just make that clear, but I was able to get someone else that I was able to resonate with. And that alone, like, drastically shaped my life. I didn't know any of this was possible until that. So I appreciated that perspective because, yeah, now you make me feel like the author of my own Think and Grow Rich.
See, it's possible. I love the idea of you went out there and found your people. You knew
Mm,
that you had to surround yourself. You knew you needed to be in a different room, metaphorical
sure.
room. And what's your advice to people who know that they need to get into a different room? Get into the room with
Yeah.
the people you want to be in, the room with the people where you want to emulate that.
That's a great question. I really think life brought me to those people more than I went out looking for them, right?
Mm.
I remember vividly at 16, 17 years old, and this is when life started to shift for me in regards to aligning me with people that I looked up to. I wanted to hang out with the older people in life because they were hanging out with the girls that were really attractive. They were driving the cars.
The older
They were
women.
the older women. Yeah, they were 20. I was 16. And they were driving the cars. They were wearing the clothes. So at first, like, I just started to make shifts that aligned me with those people. And of course, those are for the wrong reasons, but ultimately life brought me to the people that I needed and still does.
Yeah.
Let me tell you this story very quickly. I had a gentleman, I went to a networking event in New York City. I like to pop in these things every now and then, just random events that I find on Eventbrite. And I met a gentleman named Mario. We had a couple glasses of wine. It was a very small event. I think it was like 5 people, maybe 8, less than 10 for sure. And Mario and I really hit it off. A Greek guy, really good guy. A couple days later, he goes, hey, I have a buddy of mine who's starting a business, a startup. The company's called Rare Cut. His name's Anthony, this, that, the other. He was like, can you hop on a call with him? I think you could really help him. I said, yeah, let's hop on a call. So I hop on the call with Anthony. We talk about meeting up to discuss things further, this, that, the other. The next day, I was a mentor for a bunch of startups that were pitching in New York City. So I go to the event to support the startups that I'm mentoring. Lo and behold, the gentleman comes up from behind me and he's like, hey, by any chance is your name Matt? And I said, yeah, my name is Matt. And you are? Like, I'm sorry, I don't recognize the face. He goes, my name's Anthony. We were on the phone yesterday. I was like, what the hell are the chances of that? Like, literally, what the hell are the chances of that? The universe brought us, this is one of my best friends to this day. Like, the
Wow.
universe acted on my behalf to pull me to these people. So, to answer your
Wow.
question, I think number one is to have trust the universe will bring you the people that you need in your life. Number two, I think it's important for you to take action, right? I'm from New York. We take action here. I think it's important to step into the person that you want to become. For example,
Yeah.
there's this exercise. You envision your ideal life partner. You write down all of their qualities. But the thing that's not talked about enough is what is on your ideals partners list. What are those qualities? So what I'm saying is to be like, do that second part. Whoever you want to become, whoever you want to surround yourself with, who would they want to be
Mm,
surrounding themselves with, and then become that
be that
person.
person. Yes.
Exactly.
I love that. That's so true. And you cannot hear that enough. I know that you, in spite of being so successful, that you also mentioned you struggled with anxiety and you has mentioned panic attack. So I want to just touch on that a little bit for people because something I've been going through that
Mm,
I've never been through in my life and just recently started for me. And I want to talk to you about that a little bit because panic attacks don't necessarily happen when you're under stress. And so you've been facing fears, getting into the right rooms, meeting great people, running this major successful podcast, but all at the same time, you're facing this anxiety. So like that, those two things don't seem to really match up. And the same with me, like
mm.
when I have them, it doesn't really seem to match up with what's happening. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. And I appreciate you bringing this up. I think this is such an important message. First of all, just because these things happen doesn't mean that we're stuck with them. And I think that's something I had to learn. Like 2022 was the hardest year of my life. I
Mm,
say that transparently. I was 29, turning 30 in 2022, and it was the absolute hardest and darkest year of my life. Regardless, I still ran my podcast. I still did everything I had to do, but there were things that I was battling on the inside. And luckily, I'm very fortunate to have incredible people in my life that were able to help me, support me, be there for me when I needed it. And I experienced anxiety for quite some time, and I just didn't realize because I would numb it with weed. Like, I would smoke weed
okay.
and it would be gone. And I was pretty numb to the bodily sensations of anxiety until I realized after I had stopped smoking weed, which was because of a panic attack. I had realized, like, all right, now I'm becoming pretty sensitive to them while I was insensitive at one point.
Yeah.
And I had a panic attack that pretty much rocked my world in May or June of 2017, to the point where I had walked home from Times Square. I
Oh,
I,
wow.
like, completely bugged out, and it never happened again after that. I was like, "Alright, whatever." I shouldn't say never, but it didn't happen again, like, directly after. It was like, "Alright, that was a fluke." I still experienced anxiety, kept chugging along, and then fast forward to January of 2022, literally last year, I was out to eat with a couple buddies, and next thing you know, I had another panic attack. But this one was different. This one rocked my world like no other, to the point where I hid. I literally hid. I was scared. I was scared of everything. I was scared to leave my house. Don't get me wrong, I did, but
Yeah.
very cautiously.
What happened to you at the dinner? Walk us through it, what it felt
Yeah,
like.
dinner was great. I found myself under stress because I was taking on a client that I wanted to take on, but a part of me didn't want to take it on, if that makes sense.
So like a mentoring client, someone you were going to mentor.
So, someone from my branding agency. So, I own
Okay.
a branding agency and I was going to do some work for them. And I said to myself, you know what? I want to take it on, but I'm not sure. Like, I was on the fence, but I knew that, of course, like the money was great. I was like, I'm going to take the money. That
Mhm.
habit is still there sometimes. So I found myself under a little bit of stress, and when we were at dinner, things were going great. I drove there with a buddy. We had a good time. We had a drink before our table was ready. We sat down. The meal was fantastic. And this is the part I left out, and I'll be fully transparent here. I mentioned 2017, I had the panic attack.
Yeah.
That panic attack is linked to coffee. Not because coffee is bad for you, but because I overdid it. I had a venti black, I don't know, the small Starbucks one. Black, no sugar, no milk. Like, that's how I drink my coffee, iced. And I had that. I ate an entire container of chocolate covered espresso beans. eh,
Wow. Okay.
And then I had a black coffee once again at lunch. I just bugged out. I bugged out. So, fast forward again to 2022 when I'm sitting at that dinner. At the end of the meal, I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to face my fear. I'm going to have coffee again. What did I do? I ordered a decaf espresso. I enjoyed the hell out of it. Couple minutes later, I was in a full blown panic. And I sat there. I didn't run home. I didn't run out. I didn't do anything of the sort. I just sat there very uncomfortable. To the point where a buddy of mine across the table, he eventually said, he's like, "Hey man, like you all right? Like you keep taking your hat off."
Feel warmth? Is there like a warmth in your body or what do you feel
When I have panic,
physically? Yeah.
oh, like I want to jump out of my skin.
Okay.
That's the best way to put it. I want to jump out of my skin. Long story short, yeah, I sat there through it. It lasted about 10 minutes and it was scary. It
Yeah.
was scary. And like it rocked my world. It put me into this cocoon, like this shell. And for I want to say months, I just couldn't shake it. I literally couldn't shake it. I'm like, what's wrong with me? I
What are
didn't
you
want to
afraid of?
having another panic attack, having another panic attack. And then the symptom of anxiety that I experience the most happens to be lightheadedness.
Okay. Yeah.
And I know everyone's symptoms are different. Some people might experience the lightheadedness. Some people might get agitated. Some people might feel antsy. Some people might get racing heart, which I do experience as well. But I get lightheaded and I'm like, oh my God, am I going to pass out? I've never passed
Mhm.
out in my life. Knock on wood. Hopefully I never do. But to me, that's scary. And again, like all of that connected, it really led me to feel like, I don't know, it led me to feel like I just wanted to be safe and safe was home.
Yeah. I can relate to that. I get lightheadedness and
Do you? Okay.
yes, I get lightheadedness and I get a warmth, almost like it feels like there's a something coming down over me, like a covering of
Right.
something. And then I start to worry. I actually take it to the extreme and think, is something happening to my brain? Am I going to die?
Okay. Well, it's
And
easy to go into those states, right? When
yes,
panic ensues, it's
yes,
easy. So
yes,
I'm very grateful I've been able to find like an incredible woman therapist that's been able to help me. But there's a cycle to that, right? Are you
yeah,
aware of the I'm sure you are, the
yeah,
psychoeducation cycle. But that's I totally understand what you're saying. But
yeah.
continue. I'm really
Well,
curious to hear about.
I think what helps me is unfortunately you have to go through a panic attack or two or even three to be able to get to this point. But then you can look back and say, when it's happening, I know it's happening because your rational mind is still there. I know
Yeah.
it's happening right now. And I've been through this before and I've been okay. I did
Mm,
die. I was okay. This is just my body. I heard someone say this and I thought this was really, really insightful. If you stubbed your toe, you would think, "Oh, I stubbed my toe. It's gonna feel better in a few minutes." You might rub it. You might think, "Oh, that kinda hurts." And it might even get a bruise. It's gonna feel better soon. You're gonna get through it. It's not gonna affect you beyond just that little sensation in your toe. And that's what you have to
right.
think about for those physical sensations that come over you, like the lightheadedness. It's going to pass. This is just my body telling me, giving me a signal, of
Mm,
some sort. And it's almost like when you have thoughts that you don't have to believe every single thought that you have. It's the same thing with the body when you're having a panic
absolutely.
attack.
Yeah, I do. I do. I appreciate you sharing that. I think I never want anyone to experience panic, but, like, when you hear other people do and you hear their stories and it's nice to be able to resonate with someone.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people go through it. The interesting thing about panic attacks is that they happen for me when I don't think I'm feeling stressed.
Mm.
So
When you
I'll,
don't think you're feeling
yes,
stressed. Okay.
there'll be a trigger of some sort. And I'm still trying to work through trying to figure that out because this is new to me, but my heart isn't necessarily racing. I'm not in a situation where I'm afraid of anything. It just comes on. And that's
Interesting.
interesting, and that I know other people would have the same experience. Anxiety is something I think that's even more prevalent in society, or maybe people are talking about it more, and so I'm glad that we're bringing the conversation to the forefront, like, anxiety isn't weakness,
Mm.
and
I thought it
you
was for years. Yeah.
yeah, but, yeah, it's not, and it is something you have to work through, and I love that you're talking about it because it doesn't matter who you are, like, it could affect anybody.
Yeah. You know what's funny? Again, not funny. That's just such a coined phrase. It just pops up. But in 2018, I was in Europe for 15 days, and Damon was in Europe celebrating his honeymoon, I believe. And someone like that, I never expected to have anxiety. And at that point, I was pretty quiet about mine, to be honest. And when he got back to the office, he was like, "Man, I was having such anxiety when I was there. Like, I was off my grind. I was like
Mhm.
relaxing." And I was like, wow, there's so many people that experience it. And like you said, it's not a weakness. And I'm going to be honest, it does still to this day impact what I believe my self worth to be. That's
Really.
something I'm also working on. I feel less than, and I'm honest. I think I feel less than that I experience it because there's some people that are in my life that will just be like, first of all, everyone's shocked that I experience it. Every single person is shocked. And I just feel like it's not that I get treated differently, but it's almost as if I feel babied sometimes because
Mhm.
of it.
Mhm.
And I'm like,
That's a
"Hey, guys."
double-edged sword of anxiety and also other things,
Sure.
where the anxiety makes you feel a certain way. We'll call
Mm,
it bad, although I don't think that's the right word. And then because you feel that you don't want to have it, it's not something you want to be associated with, or you feel it's negative in some way, then you feel bad about that. So then you have
mm,
this double-edged sword of feeling bad because of the thing, feeling bad because you have the thing, and then worrying about what other people are thinking. It's crazy.
yeah. Yeah, it could be a spiral. It could
It's a
definitely be a
spiral.
spiral without a doubt, but
Yeah. What are your top tools for self-care, building self-worth?
top tips for self-care and self-worth. I think they've changed over time. This is my favorite one, although I don't do it anymore because it gets pretty expensive, but have you ever done flotation therapy?
No.
Oh
It
my god,
sounds
it's incredible.
in water?
In water.
Okay.
In water. This is like my number one thing to show myself that I love myself. Like, it was an investment where I would spend an hour with myself, sometimes longer, in the complete darkness, in water, just floating there, total sensory deprivation.
Oh, so a
And
sensory deprivation chamber.
sensory deprivation, yes, and I would do it every week, every single week,
Wow.
and I would just be there with what's in my mind, with what's in my heart, and I would just exist. And the reason I share that as my number one self-care tip or tool, and also self-worth, is
Mhm.
because that process of being there with myself taught me to love myself. Like, no matter what came up, and I've had some really euphoric moments in the float tank, like really euphoric. I First of all, there was one session where I was laying there and I'm like, wait, it's over. Did I fall asleep? Like, I time just flies. Um,
Wow.
but you really get to experience yourself on another level with no distractions, not even the distraction of light, no
I
sound.
love that. It sounds like meditation, but at a whole new level
Yeah.
because you can't get up
Yeah,
easily.
you can get up, you could exit the tank, like, there's nothing that encloses you, so if you feel claustrophobic and you're listening to this, I promise you there are places, because 'cause I'm one of those people, I was very nervous to do it, but the place I go to is an actual suite, so I'm 6'5", as mentioned, like, I'm not a little guy where I could just, you know, hop in a tiny little thing, like, I don't even fit
Yeah.
in the bathtub that I have in my house, so I needed a place that could actually accommodate me, so you have space, I could stand up, I could literally float back and forth. It's big enough, and it is a form of meditation to an extent. Granted, there's nothing being guided, although they do offer that. There's sound baths, there's so many things that you can do, but for me, I just like to be there with nothing going on.
Wow,
Nothing at all.
I love that. And I think that for people who might not have access to something like that, there are ways to mimic that where
Mhm.
you can put in your headphones with some kind of a tone, a calming tone or music, and just lay with your eyes closed and try to isolate yourself to be able to go inward because that's really the key. I think that's the key to
Yeah,
self-worth is going inward.
it has to be. It has to be without a doubt. That's why I had mentioned it. I was finding myself, and I'm telling you, like, some trippy experiences minus the
Wow.
drugs. Just, like, laying there, even if you lay with your eyes open, all is black, but when you lay there with your eyes open and all is black, you'll then start to see, like, kaleidoscope
Yeah.
effects, like, different colors, and I don't know the science behind it, I know Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about it a whole lot,
Yes.
but essentially that is your brain releasing some of the things that are released when you're on, like, a DMT or shrooms or whatever, and I can't speak on that because 'cause I've never done any of that stuff, but very powerful, and it's such a great way to connect with yourself.
I love that. Do you ever journal afterwards?
What's funny, they actually have a journal there where you can journal. It's a public journal,
Okay.
and I never use their public journal, but I do use my own, and this conversation is gonna make me book a session. Um
Me too. You're gonna have to give us the link to put in the show notes
Oh,
for anyone who's in the
100%.
okay.
100%, absolutely. But it's so euphoric, and yes, I have journaled, and you know what I actually like doing the most after is just going for a walk. Like, staying off my
Mm.
phone. So the best part is when you get out of the float tank, they give you a drink, right? there's a pre-drink, the float, and then a post-drink. The pre-drink is like an elixir. So if you want deep relaxation, they'll give you like some concoction, all natural, of course, like lemongrass, this, that, the other in an
Okay.
elixir.
Mhm.
Then you float and then you get out after. And the after drink of my choice is called moon milk. And this moon milk, it has you like it tastes so damn good.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
so damn good.
All right.
I
Is this in
I
New
don't
York City, this place?
it's in Greenpoint, Brooklyn.
Okay. All right.
It's
It's
in
worth the trip to
Greenpoint,
Brooklyn is really a pain in the butt to get to, but I will go.
it is worth it, I'm telling you, it's worth it. But, yeah, after I have that drink, yes, you sit there, you compose yourself because you can feel a little loopy afterwards, you
Yeah.
compose yourself. For me, I really love walking, staying off my phone, not putting my headphones in, there's enough stimulus in New York as it is, and just walking, like, walking along the water, walking randomly with no desired location, just walking.
No
That to
destination.
me no destination, right? No destination, just walking and allowing the movement to process what comes up. That to me, I find is super powerful.
Oh my gosh. I love that. Wow. What a great thing to do. Wow. All right. I want to ask you about your greatest lessons. But before I do, I just have one more question for you. What is the first thing that comes to your mind when I say the word love?
You just gave me the chills.
What does
I
love
mean,
mean to you?
I the first thing that came to my mind was self, just self. That was the first thing that came to my mind. But I had a conversation about this the other day, and, this can get me emotional because I always get emotional when I bring him up. But I got a puppy in 2020, and he is a godsend to me.
Oh,
I'm actually potentially gonna cry. I feel the tears in my eyes right
do
now,
it. Do it.
but yeah, he is an absolute godsend. He's so smart. I'm, like, really emotional just saying this. He's right here, actually. He's just sleeping, and he's just such a good dog.
What kind of dog?
He's an Australian cattle mix. If I told you everything he is, you would say that he's a super mutt, which he is. I rescued him. He's
You rescued
so
him.
fantastic,
As a puppy?
and
He was a puppy when you got him?
I got him the day he turned 3 months old.
Okay.
The day he turned 3 months old, and the reason I bring him up when it comes to love is because I just feel like he was, like, the first thing I felt love from, and I feel like that he's the first thing that I can give love to unconditionally,
Yeah.
and it's like I said, it's a complete godsend having him in my life. I cried like, a month ago, I took a video of me crying, just we were laying in bed. I do let him in my bed, and we were laying in bed, and I I I was getting choked up just thinking about life without him.
Yeah.
I'm like, one day that is a reality, but I have such a connection with this dog,
Oh, I
and
love that so much. I love
yeah,
that. No, I have always had dogs and I recently lost my dog last year and
sorry.
oh, it's gonna make me cry. It was horrible. I used to look in my dog's eyes and he would look into my eyes. And there is no comparable love. There just isn't.
Yeah.
No one will love you the way that your dog loves you. Maybe I don't know if it's the same with other pets. I've had cats. I never felt like that with my cats, but the dog, it
Well,
is. It's an amazing thing. It's definitely a good thing to do for yourself, for self-worth, for self-love, to have that type of unconditional, no matter what thing in your life. I
yeah, I
love
mean,
that.
there are days where I'm just like, "Man," no, we're humans, right? So there's days where you mess up and you're like, "Damn," like, you're pissed at yourself or you don't feel like you love yourself that day.
Yep.
But then I look at my guy and I'm like, "Man, this dog loves me even on the days I don't play fetch with him."
Yep.
Anything, you could do anything and he just always loves you, and don't get me wrong, he has a little bit of a tood sometimes. He has a mood, we all do, but it's always love. He always wants to cuddle, he always wants to be by my side, he always wants to see what I'm doing, and just, like, getting that level of attention from him is just it's a blessing.
It's such a blessing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Such a blessing. Oh my gosh. I'm so glad that you have that in your life. And I love that you are crying
Yeah, I teared
yourself.
up, I teared up,
But that you're
and
at
he
the point where you're doing that again in your life and doing it because of something good that you're doing for yourself is that's a full circle
absolutely,
moment. Oh
absolutely,
my gosh.
100%.
So what would you say are the biggest lessons? We'll do the lessons first of life, of your life.
Biggest lessons of my life. I can give you 2 off the bat that I'm thinking of. We talked about a whole lot, right? We talked about
Yes,
a lot.
we did.
We talked about a lot. So, the thing that I wanna share first is a lesson that I learned from an individual named John Gordon. Are you familiar with him by any chance?
Yes.
Okay. So he's obviously an author, he's out there on social, podcast probably. He has a lot going on, and I had a few conversations with him, but there was one thing that just stood out to me, and it was in his book called The Energy Bus, and it's an equation. Now, when I say equation, people oftentimes think math, and yes, this is math, but minus the numbers. That's another
Okay.
equation. I suck when it comes to math, so trust me, the only thing I know how to count is money. I don't know how to count much else. But the equation is E plus P equals O. And that stands for events plus perspective equals the outcome. This was such a lesson for me to learn because we do not get to control every event that takes place in our life. Although this guy would definitely try and control every single thing if he could, but it's impossible, right? Like we negotiate with the universe all the time. When we cross the street, God forbid, an oncoming car, that's an accident, right? Things like that happen. The thing we do control is the perspective. We have 100% control over that. Now, if you're going through a breakup today, it's not easy to look at your relationship that just ended and be like, you know what? Happy go lucky. I'm going to find my partner next time. No, I understand we're human and it takes some time for perspective to kick in. But that was huge for me because looking back on my life, getting kicked out of 2 high schools, getting arrested, my mother battling cancer in front of me, like literally everything we talked about were events that maybe I had some control over, but not all of it. But what did each teach me? And essentially, to sum all of that up, is this equation. Like, I get to control the perspective, which is why I speak about it openly, because there's a lot of things that I experienced that I wouldn't want to share because I don't want to be judged, right? I don't want someone to hear this and be like, "Oh, Matt was arrested." I don't want to listen to his crap. I still have that, but being that I control the perspective, I'm able to talk about it openly. So that's number 1. And then number 2 was actually from Daymond when I was working with him. Everyone always asks me, they're like, "Hey man, what's the thing that you learned from him? He's worth over $500 million, does big business. Like, what did you learn from him?" And people are always blown away by my answer, but it's pretty simple. We were in a meeting one day. It was not a heated argument, but we had 2 differing sides and he was in the middle. And me and the president were on one side, another individual was on the other side. And as our opinions differed, I looked at him and I'm like, man, this guy don't even care what we're talking about. So after the meeting, I approached Damon and I'm like, hey, like, how do you stay so level headed? It's not to say that we were even yelling, but like we were voicing our concerns for the differing opinions. And he goes, man, no matter what we choose, no one's going to die. Business isn't brain surgery. That really hit me because I'm such an emotional person. And at that point, I probably didn't control my emotions as good as I do now. So I was like, man, isn't that true? No matter what we decide, he said to me, he's, listen, we might lose some money, but we're going to make it back the next day or the day after that. This is a part of life. Like it's the up and down. And that to me was really big. And it's even beyond business, right? Like how much emphasis do we put on things that don't really matter just because we try to manipulate the world? We
Yeah.
want the world to work for us, right? And that was exactly what was happening in that moment. I get caught up in that all the time where I put so much emphasis on things that don't really matter. But at the
Yeah.
end of the day, they're really not brain surgery.
No, so true. I love that. It's about detaching from the outcome and just
Yeah,
believing and trusting that the thing that's for your highest good is going to be the outcome.
absolutely.
So, what about the blessings? What are the biggest blessings besides your dog? And by the way, what's your dog's name? What's
His
his
name is
name?
Draco.
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 So, besides
Draco,
Draco,
you wanna come say hi, bud?
come here,
No, he's
bud.
sleeping.
Oh,
He's sleeping, he's chilling, but, besides Draco, in no particular order,
no particular.
number 1 are my brothers. Again, gonna get emotional saying this, but, like, I have I'm actually really getting emotional. I have the tightest group of friends, like, people that I would have dreamed to have in my life, and I actually have them. And we're men that speak openly with one another. And I'm sure at times we hold back, but we really speak openly about what we're experiencing in life. We're not scared to cry in front of one another. We embrace one another. We don't judge one another. We love one another. We challenge one another. And I think that is like the ultimate blessing. Number 2, I would say, is my podcast. I
Mm,
would have never thought this would have been my life. never in a million years would I have thought that I'd be able to do what I do. And I posted this the other day. I felt passionless for a lot of my life. Passionless. I felt so lost because culture and society are like, oh, follow your passion. What do I follow if I don't know what my passion is? And I realized that what I did was utilize my pain and my curiosity to get me to my passion, which is the podcast, right? If you're a high performing individual and you're listening to this right now, if you say to yourself, you don't have passion, I guarantee you have something. And if you have something, you have to use what that something is, whether
Mhm.
it's pain, whether it's curiosity, whatever it is in your life. And while I was in the moment, I didn't realize that's what I was doing, but it led me here. And again, I really would have never pictured this, to be able to have conversations with some truly incredible individuals, to get mentored by them, to be able to amplify it and impact people. Like that is an absolute blessing to me each and every day. And
So
sometimes it
cool.
doesn't feel like a blessing unless I'm talking about it like
Yeah.
this. And then number 3 is my opportunity to work with Daymond. I think you gave me the best analogy possible. That is my version of Think and Grow Rich. You gave me that, and
Yeah.
I'm appreciative of that gift. I received that because that's exactly what it's served for me. Like, that is so
Right.
powerful.
And you're
So,
paying it forward, you
as
know?
much as I can, as
Yeah,
much as I
which
can.
is that's just the beauty of it. And now I've met you and I can
Mm,
feel more successful. You make people feel good. You
I
make people
appreciate that.
feel like they are a success.
I
Oh,
appreciate that, yeah.
that's your gift. It's beautiful. So what do you think in the world is the most important thing?
Wo wow. The
I know
most
it's a big
important
one.
thing. Now I'm like, "Whoa."
You don't overthink it.
I think the most important thing, it has to be love. And I'm not even saying that to be
Yeah.
cliche, but are you familiar with Dr. Jill Bolt Taylor?
No.
She
No.
has an
Oh my
incredible
gosh.
TED Talk. It's one of the most viewed TED Talks ever,
All right. I don't know
and
why I've not seen it, but I will look.
she's fantastic. I had a conversation with her, and she made me realize the whole reason why we're here is just to love, right? That's all we're here to do, is to love, and it sounds
Yeah.
cliche saying, but it's true. If Just imagine if everyone loved everyone.
It's
Just imagine
it's
it.
that was that what you just said was in my mind. You're reading my mind.
Well,
No, I totally agree.
even
That's my
even
answer
beyond
to that
that,
question. Yeah.
right? What
Yeah.
Imagine if everyone loved themselves.
Yeah.
Like, if
How different would
everyone
the
loved
world be?
themselves, how different would the world be? I think that's the most important thing, and to be able to exemplify love, maybe not every hour of the day, because that's probably impossible for some. We're not all Eckhart Tolle or whomever. We're human too. I mean, when I drive, I'm an asshole. I'm honking, I'm flipping people off, like, I'm an
Oh,
asshole
no.
when I drive.
Next
But
step, we'll have to get you over the road rage.
yeah, that's a big step. That's a big step. But yeah, just I think the most important thing is to
Just love.
love.
Yeah.
To love, yeah.
To love. Yes. And last but not least, where do we get the best pizza in New York City?
That's a great question. So it depends on what type of slice you're looking for, right? There's many different types of slices. So I'm gonna give you 2 answers. The first one is if you're looking for a Sicilian slice. A
Okay.
Sicilian slice is square, it's thicker. The best Sicilian, in my opinion, is Rose's Pizza. Rose's Pizza is located, there's numerous locations, but I'm specifically referring to the one that is on Fresh Pond Road in Queens, New York. It
Mm.
is out of this world. But if you want a regular slice, I would suggest L'Industria. L apostrophe Industrie, L'Industria. It's Italian. And wow, out of this world. You could top, they have a bunch of toppings. I prefer to have mine with burrata on top. It is to die for, to say the least. That's in Williamsburg, the south side of Williamsburg. I don't recall the street, so I'm not gonna share the street, but that
Okay.
L'Industria in Williamsburg, Brooklyn.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Wow. Thank you, Matt, for all. I feel like there are a million more things we could talk about, but we've got to put a limit on it. And I just am so grateful for your time, for your beautiful energy. You didn't swear at all. I'm
I
shocked. I
didn't?
thought, no,
Oh, I thought I did.
I don't think you did.
I'm gonna pat myself on the back for that.
And I'm really appreciative of you. And I thank you from the bottom
Well,
of my
thank
heart for
you.
being with us.
Seriously, I'm expressing gratitude to you for sharing your platform, for you being yourself, for you showing up the way you show up, and for what you're putting out into the world. Like, seriously, I sent you that message for a reason, and what you do, like, it's exemplified through your work, and I'm super grateful for the opportunity to be here with you, so thank you so much.
Thank you.